Americans are becoming increasingly aware that our food system is broken. The food pyramid we were all taught in schools is heavily influenced by big agriculture. Is the government going too far when they target a simple Amish farmer who refuses to comply with their standards and produce an all-natural organic product? Or are they really trying to keep the public safe? In this video, we explain some of the differences between big agriculture and Amish farming, and how and why the government has turned Amos Miller, a small-scale Amish farmer, into an outlaw. Amos Miller is a Pennsylvania Amish farmer. Miller operates a small, independent farm dedicated to organic, unprocessed food, free from government-mandated additives and industrial intervention. His farm has gained a loyal following of customers who actively seek out raw dairy, grass-fed meats, and other farm-fresh products they believe are healthier and more natural than what's available in grocery stores. But that independence has come at a cost. The U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Food and Drug Administration have repeatedly cracked down on Miller's operation, citing violations of federal food safety laws. At the heart of the issue is a question that extends far beyond one farmer. Should small, traditional farms be forced to comply with the same regulations as massive agribusinesses? Or is this a case of government overreach, targeting those who refuse to conform to a broken system? Miller's battle with federal regulators isn't just about one farm. It's about the future of food in America. At first glance, the laws governing food safety seem reasonable. Regulations are meant to protect consumers from contamination, disease, and unsafe practices. But a deeper look reveals a troubling reality. These rules don't just protect public health. They also serve to consolidate power in the hands of massive agribusinesses while crushing independent farmers like Amos Miller. The modern American food system is dominated by a handful of corporate giants that control everything from seed patents to meat processing. These companies have deep ties to government agencies like the USDA and FDA, influencing the very regulations that are supposed to keep the industry in check. The result? A web of red tape that small farmers simply can't navigate without immense financial resources. For Amos Miller, the key battlegrounds are raw milk and independent meat processing. The USDA requires that all meat be processed in federally inspected facilities, a rule that favors large corporate slaughterhouses while making it nearly impossible for small farmers to process their own livestock. Similarly, the sale of raw milk, a natural, unpasteurized product consumed for centuries, is heavily restricted, even as mass-produced dairy filled with hormones and additives floods supermarket shelves. Miller's customers know exactly what they are buying. They seek out his farm for food that aligns with their values: organic, unprocessed, and free from industrial intervention. Yet the government claims it has the authority to dictate what these consumers can and cannot eat. Is this truly about safety, or is it about control? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. By enforcing these regulations with an iron fist, federal agencies aren't just regulating food safety. They are shaping the market itself, tilting the scales in favor of industrial farming while pushing independent farmers out of business. The case against Amos Miller is not an isolated incident. It's part of a larger pattern, where regulatory agencies serve the interests of the biggest players while making it harder for small farms to survive. Much like a small farm looking to survive, I'm just a small channel looking to survive. If you are enjoying this video, please be sure to help out and hit the subscribe button for me. To understand why Amos Miller's farm is at odds with federal regulators, it's important to compare his traditional Amish farming practices with the industrial system that dominates American agriculture today. Amish farms operate on a philosophy that has remained unchanged for generations, one rooted in self-sufficiency, sustainability, and a deep respect for the land. Unlike large agribusinesses that rely on synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, and genetically modified crops, Amish farmers embrace natural cycles. Their livestock graze on open pastures, their crops grow without chemical intervention, and their dairy products remain raw and unpasteurized, just as they have for centuries. In contrast, modern industrial farming is designed for mass production and efficiency, often at the expense of quality and sustainability. Livestock are raised in confined animal feeding operations, where they are given antibiotics to counteract the effects of overcrowding. Crops are sprayed with chemical pesticides and fertilizers to maximize yield, and dairy is pasteurized and homogenized to meet regulatory standards. The result is a food system where products are highly processed, chemically treated, and heavily regulated, not necessarily to ensure quality, but to maintain control over the supply chain. Amos Miller's farm doesn't fit into this system. His raw dairy, grass-fed meats, and unprocessed foods stand in direct opposition to the industrial model. His customers aren't unsuspecting consumers. They are people who actively seek out food they believe to be healthier, more natural, and free from government-mandated additives. Yet, instead of allowing these individuals the freedom to choose, federal agencies insist that Miller comply with the same regulations designed for large-scale operations. Regulations that make it nearly impossible for small farms to remain independent. The irony is that industrial food production, despite its regulatory oversight, has been linked to numerous health concerns. Antibiotic resistance, pesticide contamination, and the long-term effects of processed foods on public health. Meanwhile, Amish farms, with their minimal intervention and traditional practices, are treated as threats to food safety. This isn't just about one farm. It's about the fundamental difference between two competing visions of agriculture. Should food production be centralized, industrialized, and government-controlled? Or should small farmers have the right to produce food the way they always have, free from the heavy hand of regulation? Amos Miller's quiet Amish farm may seem like an unlikely battleground, but in the eyes of the federal government, it became a major target. After years of legal battles, fines, and warnings, authorities took drastic action. In 2022, federal agents arrived at Miller's farm, not as customers looking for wholesome, natural food, but as enforcers of government regulation. The USDA accused him of failing to comply with federal food safety laws, and as a result, sought to shut down his operation entirely. A judge issued an order that effectively barred Miller from selling his products, even to the dedicated customers who had voluntarily chosen to buy from him. Armed with court rulings, federal inspectors and law enforcement demanded that Miller cease operations and comply with USDA standards. The government's stance was clear. Either Miller conformed to the industrial farming model, using USDA-approved processing facilities and adhering to federal pasteurization and inspection requirements, or he would be put out of business. In an even more aggressive move, the court imposed hefty fines, totaling over $300,000, and threatened jail time if Miller refused to comply. To an independent Amish farmer with no ties to corporate agribusiness, these penalties weren't just burdensome, they were crippling. But Miller refused to back down. His case became a rallying point for food freedom advocates, small farmers, and those who saw this as government overreach in its purest form. To them, this wasn't about food safety, it was about control. While the government framed the crackdown as a necessary measure to protect public health, many saw it as a blatant attempt to force small farmers into the same regulatory system that benefits corporate agriculture. After all, industrial food giants have faced numerous food safety violations, yet rarely see the kind of enforcement action that was leveled against Miller. The case of Amos Miller raises two important questions. Where should the line be drawn between food safety and personal freedom? And do we trust a government influenced by money and lobbyists to make decisions on our food safety? On one hand, government regulations claim to exist to prevent foodborne illnesses, ensuring that what reaches consumers meets federally approved safety standards. But on the other hand, should those same rules apply to small, independent farmers who sell directly to willing customers, especially when those customers actively seek out unprocessed, natural foods? Supporters of Miller argue that individuals should have the right to choose where their food comes from, free from government interference. They see the crackdown on his farm as an example of big agriculture using regulation as a weapon, one that makes it nearly impossible for small, independent farms to survive. But regulators insist that these rules exist for a reason. Without oversight, they argue, unsafe practices could go unchecked, leading to potential public health risks. The question remains, are these strict regulations truly about safety, or are they about maintaining control over the food supply? As government agencies continue to expand their influence over farming, the debate isn't going away. Is this a necessary step in ensuring food safety, or is it an overreach that crushes small farms in favor of corporate dominance? I know where I stand on this issue, but I would love to hear your thoughts on this in the comments. While Amos isn't your typical outlaw, his story, much like Popcorn Sutton's, illustrates an example of a government imposing its might on an individual's lifestyle and livelihood. If you enjoyed hearing about Amos and his fight against the government, please like and subscribe. It will really help me grow this channel, so I can bring more content about figures both historical and current that defy the law and give a big middle finger to the system.